The social contract has been broken a long time ago. And we have an unconstitutional fourth branch of government who's unaccountable to the president, unaccountable to Congress, unaccountable to anybody but their bottom line. This is a guy named Scott Horton. He wrote a book called Provoked, where he explains how NATO and the West actually is just as much, to blame for this war, maybe more than anybody else. We provoked the Russians into invading Ukraine. We knew it was going to happen, and we just did it anyway.
It's unreal. Literally, the director of the FBI framing the president for treason. The director of the CIA framing him outright. All their staff, all of the top executives of the Justice Department and FBI knowingly lying about the president of the United States in that way. When they're all post-constitutional, ad hoc agencies and departments that don't have any right to exist. John McLaughlin, who is the former acting director of the CIA, was asked, hey man, people say that there's a deep state overthrowing Trump. And he goes, yeah, well, thank God for the deep state. That's a good thing, because let me tell you something. The problem is not at Justice, and the problem is not at FBI, and the problem is not at CIA. The problem is not the NSA. The problem is at 1600 Pennsylvania, right? Except that was a damned lie. It was all a lie. So, ergo, in fact, the problem was at Langley, at DOJ, at FBI, at NSA. How dare they come at the elected president this way? And I'll tell you, man, if the Republicans had done this to Obama and Hillary over the reset, I'd be just as pissed off, and I'd have written 100 pages about that too.
And as far as to go behind the president's back and have talks with Zelensky, almost no doubt priming his head with BS about how he needs to stand up to Trump's bullying and look strong for Ukraine, and if he just hangs in there, he'll get into NATO, and actively sabotaging the will of the American people and the will of the United States president. And after that is Ike, in 1961, warning us about the military-industrial complex. And then at the end of this video, I show you where this is actually the second time that they've done this, where Trump had it to where there was a peace deal being negotiated, and it was sabotaged by the neocons and the warmongers and the radical left. And
we face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Of our defenses. Development of unrealistic programs to cure every ill in agriculture. A dramatic expansion in basic and applied research. These and many other possibilities, each possibly promising in itself, may be suggested as the only way to the road we wish to travel. But each proposal must be weighed in the light of a broader consideration.
Reality.
The need to maintain balance in and among national programs. Balance between the private and the public economy. Balance between the cost and hoped for advantages. Balance between the clearly necessary and the comfortably desirable. Balance between our essential requirements as a nation and the duties imposed by the nation upon the individual. Balance between actions of the moment and the national welfare of the future. The decade stands as proof that our people and their government have, in the main, understood these truths and have responded to them well in the face of threat and stress. But threats, new in kind or degree, constantly arise. Of these I mention two only. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. Potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process. Nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense.
This is the fiasco that just took place between Trump and Vance and Zelensky in Ukraine.
You to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems? Bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this.
I'm not
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
So to catch you up on the situation, we have 1 million deaths almost now between Ukraine and Russia. We're closer to World War III than we've ever been. Putin is willing to negotiate. At least it seems like it. That's still up in the air, but it seems like he's willing to negotiate with Trump. This war was started essentially by the Biden administration and Democrats trying to talk tough and, say that Ukraine could be admitted in NATO. They successfully brainwashed the country to care about this Ukraine and send them a bunch of money. Well, Russia essentially called the United States and the West altogether. He called our bluff and went into Ukraine and said, look, we told you guys stop advancing NATO eastward. We told you guys Ukraine would be a red line. You talk tough anyway. You left us no choice. But since then, instead of admitting they were wrong, in order to perpetuate this, they have been all over the airways talking about, how many times did you hear this? Unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, this unprovoked act of aggression by Russia, and blah, 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 over and over. They had to perpetuate this narrative of the evil dictator Putin even going as far to say if you disagree with this war and you want peace, that it's Russian propaganda. No, the fact that NATO kept expanding eastward and they told us that Ukraine was a red line. If you enter NATO, Ukraine into NATO, it's going to be a real problem between Russia and the United States. Even though they told us that, and we did it anyway, and now the Russians are mad about it. Even though, all that aside, it's Russian propaganda if you even mention this situation. So, and now they've adopted a position where Putin is an evil dictator and he's too evil to negotiate because we Democrats, foreign policy establishment, we're too virtuous to communicate with this evil dictator. And this is now the second time that this war could have been ended. But it's sabotaged, successfully hyped up Zelensky's head into thinking he's going to get into NATO. And it's been made clear by Russia that this will cause a thermonuclear war between the US and Russia. The Democrats don't care. They want to kill every Ukrainian down to the last man in this unwinnable war. They want to send $2 billion more dollars worth of missiles or something over there to Ukraine. And then however long it takes to exhaust those, then we're right back in the exact same situation. All because the Democrats are unwilling to accept that they were wrong, that Russia was not weak, that if we funded Ukraine, it was not going to be a major blow to Putin on the world stage. Everything that they hoped would happen did not happen. And another $2 billion or 75,000 British troops on the ground, which is their entire army, is not going to help this situation. But it does not matter because we need to protect the ideology. Even Putin has made it clear that he does not want this war to go on indefinitely. He made it clear. He did it to prove a point because his security interests were being overlooked. So he did it to make a point, but he doesn't want this to keep going on forever. Trump's trying to end it. Putin wants to end it. Zelensky needs to end it. But the only people that don't are the Democrats and the arm, the blob, the military industrial complex, foreign policy establishment blob are the only people that want this to continue. But since then, instead of admitting they were wrong, in order to perpetuate this, they have been all over the airways talking about, how many times did you hear this? Unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, this unprovoked act of aggression by Russia, and blah, 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 over and over. They had to perpetuate this narrative of the evil dictator Putin, even going as far to say if you disagree with this war and you want peace, that it's Russian propaganda. No, the fact that NATO kept expanding eastward and they told us that Ukraine was a red line. If you enter NATO, Ukraine into NATO, it's going to be a real problem between Russia and the United States. Even though they told us that, and we did it anyway, and now the Russians are mad about it. Even though, all that aside, it's Russian propaganda if you even mention this situation.
Literally, not in the absolute constitutional sense, but in every other way, they are the traitors to the American people, to our constitutional system, and the rest.
Of course, yeah. Provoking war with a nuclear power, certainly more treasonous than anything I could think of. What were the provocations that took place under President Trump?
Oh, well, he increased the weapons and he refused to implement the peace deal because, as you remember, he was absolutely under fire, gun to his head, essentially. He could not normalize with Russia. The U.S. permanent establishment just would not allow it. And it's one of the things that they absolutely threw them into a panic about him, was that he just wanted to get along.